Building a life takes time, but destroying one only takes a choice. Every decision you make is either construction or demolition. Choose wisely. You can't fix your life in one day, but you can ruin it. If you enjoy these audiobooks, hit like and subscribe, and join the 1% on this channel, because I know for a fact you aren't an average Joe. Also, let me know where you're listening from, and the time there in the comments below. It's always cool to see. Now let's begin. Chapter 1, The Destruction Paradox. The text message that destroyed everything was only 11 words long. I was sitting in my car outside my daughter's school, engine idling, watching other parents stream through the pickup line with the kind of casual efficiency that comes with routine. The notification lit up my phone just as I spotted Emma's backpack bouncing toward me in the crowd of kids. Can't make it tonight. Something came up with work. Rain check? 11 words, 47 characters including spaces, less than 3 seconds to type. And just like that, 5 years of marriage counseling, 2 years of rebuilding trust, 18 months of careful progress, all undone in the time it takes to sneeze. But here's the thing, most people don't understand about what I call the destruction paradox. It wasn't really the text that destroyed my marriage. That message was just the final straw. The one crack that revealed a structure already weakened by months of tiny compromises, quiet betrayals, and choices that felt too small to matter at the time. The truth is, you can't fix your life in one day, but you can absolutely ruin it. And the terrifying part? Most of us are doing exactly that without realizing it. Destroying our lives, one small unconscious decision at a time. I didn't learn this lesson in a book or a seminar. I learned it the hard way. It's everywhere once you start noticing. It takes decades to build a reputation, but only minutes to destroy it. Years to master a craft, seconds to make the mistake that ruins it. Months of sacrifice to lose weight, just a few days of carelessness to gain it back. A lifetime to build wealth, a single decision to watch it vanish. The speed of destruction will always outpace the pace of creation. And it's not a coincidence, it's how complex systems work. Building requires patience, energy, and careful coordination. But destroying? All it takes is one weak spot, one spark, one bad choice. Think about it. A house takes months to build, but it can burn to the ground in less than an hour. A friendship can grow over years, but end in a single betrayal. A business can take decades to build, but collapse overnight because of one careless mistake. And yet, we keep living like the opposite is true. We live like destruction is something we can always bounce back from, like the damage is temporary and reversible. We tell ourselves that good choices don't matter much because we'll fix things later. But that's the delusion. Building and destroying do not operate on the same timeline. And while the dramatic collapses get all the attention, the most dangerous destructions are the ones you don't notice. The invisible erosions. I thought about this as I drove home that day from school pickup. Emma in the back seat, chattering about her art project, blissfully unaware that her parents' marriage was dissolving in real time. When did it really start? Was it 6 months earlier, when I started staying late at work even when I didn't have to? Was it a year earlier, when we let date nights quietly fade away? Or was it 2 years before that, when I stopped listening? Really listening, because scrolling through my phone felt easier. Or maybe it was earlier still, the first time I quietly decided that my comfort mattered more than connection, that my convenience mattered more than commitment, that my short-term desires outweighed our long-term dreams. The truth is, marriages don't end because of one blowout argument, or even an affair. They end because of thousands of tiny choices where two people keep prioritizing everything else over each other. Until one day, they wake up as strangers, sharing the same house, but not the same life. And here's the kicker. Just like positive choices compound into extraordinary results, destructive choices compound too, only faster. Skip one workout, you feel sluggish. Skip a week, you lose conditioning. Skip 6 months, you erase years of progress. Tell one lie, you have to remember it. Tell several, and you lose track. Tell enough, and eventually, lying becomes who you are. Skip one important conversation, you create distance. Skip dozens, you create walls. Until one day, you're living separate lives under the same roof. That's the compound destruction effect. It's why the phrase, "just this once," is the most dangerous in the English language. Because just this once is never just once. It's the beginning of a pattern, a slippery slope that gets easier to repeat and harder to break each time. That night, after Emma was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and did something I had never done before. I traced back the choices that led me here. Not the big, obvious ones. The small ones. The choice to check my phone during dinner. The choice to stay late at work when I didn't need to. The choice to say, maybe later, when she wanted to talk. Each decision made sense in the moment. Each felt justified. But together, they created a pattern. One that placed everything else ahead of what mattered most. That's when I realized something most of us never stop to see. The choices that destroy us aren't always destructive in themselves. Many are neutral. They just quietly erode us, bit by bit, until there's nothing left. And the most dangerous part? We rationalize it. I don't have a choice. Everybody does this. It's not a big deal. I'll fix it later. These are the lies we tell ourselves. The stories that make destruction feel logical, even necessary. The stories that blind us to the truth, that every small choice is shaping who we are becoming. 3 hours after that text, I was in the bathroom staring at my reflection. Not shocked by my face, but by the person I had quietly become. A man who said family mattered but consistently chose work. A man who valued honesty but was comfortable with small deceptions. A man who talked about presence but lived distracted. That version of me wasn't evil. He wasn't malicious. He was just lazy with his choices. He was someone who took the path of least resistance and slowly destroyed the very things he claimed to care about most. And the scariest part? I hadn't chosen destruction consciously. I had just stopped choosing at all. The next morning, life looked the same. Emma still needed breakfast. The coffee maker still worked. The routine was the same. But I wasn't. Because I had finally seen the destruction paradox clearly. You can't fix your life in one day, but you can absolutely start rebuilding in one day. Not with a grand gesture, not with a dramatic transformation, but with one conscious choice, and then another, and another. Because while destruction can happen fast, construction always begins the same way, with a single decision to stop the erosion and start rebuilding. That morning, as I made Emma's lunch, really made it, with more presence than I had in months, I chose differently. Not because that choice would fix everything, but because it was the first step toward becoming someone who built, instead of someone who eroded. And that's the paradox. We can lose it all in a single day if we're careless. But we can also choose, right now, in this very moment, to protect, to nurture, to rebuild. That choice is always available, always. The only question is, will you make it? Chapter 2. The Anatomy of Self-Sabotage. The promotion I had been working toward for 3 years was finally within reach. I sat across from my boss in her corner office, pretending to focus on the view behind her while my stomach tightened into a knot. She flipped through my performance review, each page feeling like a verdict. Then she said the words I had been waiting to hear. We're recommending you for the senior director position. HR just needs to complete the background check and reference calls. This was supposed to be the moment I dreamed of. Years of staying late, missing dinners, swallowing frustrations. It had all led here. I should have felt nothing but pride. Instead, I felt that same gnawing knot in my stomach. The same one I'd felt when I got into my dream college. When I met someone who could have been the love of my life. When I finally had the chance to launch the business I always talked about but never started. The knot that warned me something inside me was about to destroy everything I'd worked for. And it did. Within 48 hours, I had found a way to sabotage it. Not with one dramatic mistake, but through tiny, seemingly reasonable choices that added up to disaster. I showed up late to a client meeting. Traffic, I told myself. I fired off an email with a tone that came across as dismissive. Just being efficient, I convinced myself. I made a joke during a presentation, the kind of humor that had landed before. But this time, in front of senior leadership, it fell flat. Each incident seemed forgivable on its own, but together they painted a picture HR couldn't ignore, and my boss couldn't defend. The promotion slipped away. Again. That night, I finally stopped pretending it was just bad luck. I pulled out a notebook and for the first time tried to map out what was really happening. What I found was chilling. Self-sabotage wasn't random. It had a signature. My signature. Every time life handed me something good, I followed the same cycle. At first, I was focused, motivated, steady. Then, as the prize drew closer, pressure turned into panic. The closer I came to success, the more threatened I felt by it. And then, always then, I would find a way to trip myself before I crossed the finish line. Not with big, obvious failures, but with small acts of quiet destruction that felt reasonable at the time. Why? The answer came like a slap I didn't see coming. I wasn't afraid of failure. Failure was familiar. I knew how to pick myself up after disappointment. I knew how to survive setbacks. What terrified me was success. Because success came with expectations, with pressure, with the possibility that people might see me not as who I believed I was, but as someone I wasn't sure I could live up to being. It wasn't failure I was protecting myself from. It was change. And the scariest part? I wasn't alone. Once I saw it in myself, I saw it everywhere. Friends who destroyed promising relationships before they got too real. Colleagues who froze the moment their careers started to take off. People who found ways to explain away every missed opportunity, not realizing they were the ones pulling the rug out from under themselves. Sometimes it showed up as perfectionism, the kind that sets impossible standards so you never have to finish, never have to risk the vulnerability of not being enough. Other times, it showed up as the quiet conspiracy of the comfort zone. The voice whispering that what you know, even if it's miserable, is safer than stepping into what you don't. But the most dangerous part of self-sabotage? The hidden rewards it gives you. The sympathy from others when you fail. The relief of not having to keep proving yourself. The ability to stay the person you've always known yourself to be instead of growing into someone new. Failure, in its own twisted way, feels easier to control than success. 6 months later, sitting in a coffee shop nursing the bitter taste of another mischance, I overheard a conversation that cracked everything wide open. A woman at the next table leaned into her friend and confessed, "I always find a way to ruin my job interviews. It's like I can't help it. The better it's going, the more I know I'll say something to blow it up." Her friend looked at her for a long moment and asked a question that froze me in place. "What are you afraid would happen if you actually got the job?" The woman hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm afraid I'd have to become someone I don't know how to be." Those words hit me like a punch to the chest. That was it. That was the truth I had been running from. It wasn't that I didn't want success. It was that success demanded I become someone I wasn't sure I could hold on to. Someone disciplined. Someone consistent. Someone worthy. And that terrified me more than failure ever could. But here's the thing. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Once you hear the lies you've been whispering to yourself, you can't pretend they're the truth anymore. The moment I recognized my sabotage not as bad luck, but as a choice, an unconscious one, yes, but still a choice, something shifted. Self-sabotage no longer felt like fate. It felt like a prison I had built myself. And if I built it, maybe I could tear it down. I knew I couldn't fix years of sabotaging habits in a single day, but I could start recognizing the moments they appeared. I could notice the knot in my stomach as a warning sign instead of a sentence. I could start building what I came to call my success tolerance. The ability to let good things happen without instantly searching for a way to destroy them. The anatomy of self-sabotage is complex, but it follows predictable patterns. And patterns, once exposed, can be interrupted. Choices, once understood, can be changed. And it all begins the same way. By refusing to conspire against yourself. By choosing, even in the smallest of ways, to step toward the life you want instead of away from it. Because the truth is, success doesn't demand you become someone you don't know. It demands you finally become the person you've been all along. The one you've been too afraid to believe you already are. Chapter 3. The compound effect of small destructions. The credit card statement that arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning stopped me in my tracks. $47,000. I blinked, looked again, even rubbed the paper with my thumb as if the number might smudge away. It didn't. It just sat there in black ink, daring me to believe it. $47,000 of debt. And the strangest part? I couldn't point to a single grand mistake. No reckless shopping spree, no luxury car, no secret gambling habit, nothing. Just the slow creep of choices I had told myself were harmless. A $20 lunch because I didn't feel like cooking. A $40 gadget I didn't need. A $100 subscription I kept meaning to cancel. 50 here, 30 there. Little comforts that felt small in the moment, yet somehow added up to something that could crush me for years. And that was the day I understood something that most of us ignore until it's too late. Destruction rarely comes in the form of a lightning strike. It sneaks in drop by drop, moment by moment, decision by decision, until one day you wake up staring at the bill. We all think disasters are big, but the truth, the most dangerous kind of damage is invisible, incremental. It's the small decisions that fly under our radar, that feel justifiable, even innocent. You don't hear alarm bells when you skip one workout. You don't feel guilt when you say, "I'll just buy this one little thing." And yet, over time, these tiny cracks don't just weaken the foundation. They can bring the whole house down. Think about it. A canyon isn't carved in a single storm. It's carved by patient drops of water, over years, centuries, wearing away stone one imperceptible inch at a time. That's what these little destructions do. They wear us down quietly, until the damage is too deep to ignore. At the time, I started calling it the mathematics of marginal decline. Because here's the math no one warns you about. Being just 1% less attentive to your relationships today doesn't feel like anything, but stack that 1% every day for a year, and you're 37% less connected to the people you love. Stretch it over 5 years, and you can go from inseparable to strangers. It works the same with your health, your money, even your character. 1% less aligned with your values, 1% less effort, 1% less care. It all seems harmless in isolation, but in the long run, it reshapes who you are. And if you're anything like me, you're probably asking yourself right now, how many times have I told myself, it's just this once? That's the trick our brains play, the justification engine. We're experts at creating excuses that sound noble on the surface. I deserve this after the day I've had. Life is short. Everyone needs a break. I'll make up for it tomorrow. Sound familiar? But here's the trap. Each of those justifications feels so reasonable, so kind. You're not avoiding work. You're taking care of yourself. You're not wasting money. You're rewarding yourself. You're not lowering your standards. You're just being realistic. But those kind choices, repeated over and over, can quietly rewrite your entire life. And the scariest part? There's no clear line that warns you when you've crossed over. There's no moment where the alarm says, now you're out of shape, or now your marriage is broken, or now you're officially irresponsible with money. The thresholds we imagine don't exist. The damage accumulates so gradually that you don't even notice who you've become, until the mirror shows you a stranger. That's why the first compromise is always the most dangerous. Because once you prove to yourself you'll bend your standards in one area, it gets easier and easier to bend them again. A white lie here, a corner cut there, and slowly, You become someone whose actions no longer match the identity you cling to. And it never stays contained. A little destruction in one area spills into others. Poor financial choices lead to stress. Stress leads to bad health choices. That lack of health leads to poor performance at work. Poor performance creates more financial strain. And on the spiral spins. That's the cascade of destruction. A slow leak that becomes a flood. And here's the truth that kept me awake at night. If you let it go long enough, there really is a point of no return. Trust in a relationship can collapse past repair. Health can decline past healing. Reputations can be ruined in ways that never fully come back. You don't fall off the cliff in one jump. You slide toward it slowly, until suddenly there's no way back up. But here's where I need you to lean in. Because if this all sounds terrifying, it should. But it's not hopeless. When I realized this, I started watching for what I now think of as early warning signs. Subtle things. Rationalizing more often. Feeling less bothered by small compromises. Saying, this isn't a big deal, more than I used to. Telling myself, I'll fix it tomorrow more often than I should. Those tiny signals matter, because they're flashing lights on the dashboard, warning you before the engine completely gives out. And if you catch them early enough, you can still change course. That's the beauty in all this. Unlike some disasters, the cascade of destruction doesn't require a dramatic rescue mission. You don't have to fix everything overnight. You just have to interrupt the pattern. One small, conscious choice in the other direction. Because compounding doesn't care if it works for you or against you. The same way little destructions build up, little improvements do too. If you got just 1% better each day, just 1%, the difference would be invisible in the moment. But after a year, you'd be 37% stronger, healthier, more aligned with who you want to be. Keep going 5 years, and you'll barely recognize yourself in the best way possible. And that's the hope in this whole story. You can't erase every mistake overnight, but you can stop the leak. You can choose to begin compounding in your favor instead of against you. And the crazy thing? That turning point can start now, with the next decision you make. So let me ask you, what's one small choice you could make today that your future self would thank you for? Because one way or another, the compound effect is shaping your life. The only question is, will it destroy you or rebuild you? Chapter 4, the Recovery Protocol. The intervention happened in a grocery store checkout line on a Thursday night. I was standing there with a cart loaded with stress-eating snacks, impulse buys, and things I didn't need but had convinced myself I deserved. The total flashed $127.83, enough to push my already tight budget past its limit. But it wasn't the money that stopped me. It was a sudden, crystal clear recognition of a pattern that had led to mounting credit card debt, to strain in my marriage, to little erosions in every part of my life. A pattern built on thousands of tiny compromises disguised as reasonable choices. I was standing at a choice point. I could either follow the familiar rhythm of self-destruction, or I could interrupt it. I could continue the momentum of compound destruction, or I could begin the momentum of compound reconstruction. For the first time in months, I chose differently. I left the cart right where it was and walked out. Not because I was suddenly disciplined or morally superior or superhuman. I stopped because I understood something crucial. Recovery doesn't require perfection. It requires interruption. The interruption principle became my anchor. You don't need to fix everything at once, but you do need to stop making it worse. Most advice focuses on what you should start doing, but before you can build positive momentum, you have to interrupt negative momentum. You have to recognize the pattern and act differently at the moment it would normally continue. Recovery begins with seeing the pattern. You can't interrupt what you don't notice, and destructive cycles usually operate just below awareness. I developed a system to catch them early. First, trigger identification. What feelings or situations consistently lead to destructive choices? For me, it was stress, boredom, and feeling overwhelmed. Those emotional states made me vulnerable to instant relief at long-term cost. Second, choice point recognition. When is the exact moment you can make a different choice? Often, it's earlier than you think. It's not when you're at the checkout. It's the decision to go to the store for comfort, rather than necessity. Third, consequence projection. What happens if you follow the pattern versus interrupt it? Following it leads to guilt, stress, and reinforcement of bad habits. Interrupting it leads to temporary discomfort, but you maintain self-respect and forward momentum. One of the hardest lessons was learning the power of minimum viable interventions. When your decision-making is already compromised by stress, willpower, or fatigue, trying to overhaul everything at once is a recipe for failure. Instead, I started tiny. Not never stress eat again, but pause for 30 seconds before making a food choice. Not never buy anything on impulse, but leave items in my cart for 5 minutes before checking out. Almost trivial interventions, but each one created a space between trigger and response, a crack in the automatic flow of destruction. The most sustainable way to interrupt destructive patterns is substitution, not elimination. If stress eating is your habit, replace it with a behavior that fulfills the same need. Organizing a drawer, taking a walk, calling a friend. Impulse buying? Substitute a small act of control that doesn't cost your future. Destructive behaviors always serve real needs. Substitution works because it honors that need while rewiring your response. You don't deny the desire. You meet it smarter. The surprising part: momentum builds fast. Each successful interruption makes the next one easier. Each tiny win proves that change is possible. Psychologists call this self-efficacy, the belief that you can influence your own behavior. Every choice not to fall back strengthens that belief. But recovery isn't linear. There are relapses, moments when you fall back into old patterns. That's okay. Relapses aren't failure, they're data. Each one teaches you about triggers, vulnerabilities, or strategies you hadn't seen before. The key is to get back on track quickly, rather than letting the slip define you. Support is critical. I learned the value of a support system architecture, relationships and environments designed to make recovery easier and relapse harder. I started spending time with people whose behaviors I wanted to model, avoided situations that triggered old patterns, and built accountability into my routines. The deepest level of recovery is identity reconstruction. You don't become someone new overnight. Every interrupted pattern, every conscious choice builds evidence that you are someone who chooses reconstruction. Over time, that evidence becomes a new identity, replacing the one that sabotaged you. After months of experimentation, I formalized what I call the recovery protocol. Step 1. Pattern documentation. Identify your destructive cycles without judgment. Step 2. Trigger mapping. Map the emotions, situations, and environments that activate them. Step 3. Interruption planning. Create achievable interventions for each pattern. Step 4. Substitution design. Find healthier alternatives for each destructive habit. Step 5. Support architecture. Build social and environmental supports. Step 6. Progress tracking. Monitor interruptions, relapses, and momentum without perfectionism. The most powerful part? Compound recovery effects. Just as destruction compounds over time, recovery compounds too. Each success strengthens the next. Each day of consistent interruption makes recovery feel more natural, and destruction less inevitable. You can't fix your life in one day, but you can stop the patterns that are destroying it. You can begin compound reconstruction. And that choice, that very next interruption, the decision to break the destructive cycle, can happen right now, in this moment, with the very next choice you make. Chapter 5. The Architecture of Resilience. The test came without warning on a Tuesday that seemed like any other. I was 6 months into recovery from destructive patterns, cautiously confident in the progress I'd made, when the world decided to hit me all at once. My mother had been diagnosed with cancer. My company was implementing layoffs. And my landlord was selling the building, forcing me to find a new home within 60 days. 3 massive stressors, all landing at the same time, each capable of reigniting every destructive habit I'd fought to interrupt. In the past, This combination would have sent me spiraling, stress spending, emotional eating, avoiding social contact, procrastinating on everything that mattered, letting every healthy habit I'd built collapse under the pressure. But this time was different. I didn't fall apart. I didn't handle everything perfectly, but I didn't crumble either. Somehow, I automatically implemented strategies I had built into my life specifically for moments like this. That day taught me a crucial lesson. Recovery stops the bleeding, but resilience prevents it from happening again. Recovery interrupts destructive patterns. Resilience builds systems that make it difficult for those patterns to reactivate under stress. The most counterintuitive thing about resilience is that you build it during calm periods. When life is smooth, stress is low, and everything feels under control. That's when you need to prepare for the storms. It goes against instinct. Naturally, we relax when things are going well and scramble only when crises arrive. But resilience is like insurance. You buy it before you need it, not after. The paradox is that the people who most need resilience systems often lack the capacity to build them. They're overwhelmed by life. Meanwhile, those with the power to build resilience often feel no urgency because they aren't yet tested. Through trial, error, and observation, I discovered that real resilience requires 3 layers, each designed to handle stress at a different level. The first layer is daily resilience practices. Small habits that strengthen your baseline, so normal life stress doesn't trigger destructive behavior. They aren't glamorous, but they prevent minor challenges from becoming crises. For me, these included 5 minutes of morning reflection to set intentions, a brief evening review of the day's events, and 1 deliberate act of self-care. A small way to remind myself I was worth protecting. These practices weren't about perfection or optimizing every minute. They were about maintaining awareness, staying anchored to my values, and navigating daily life without slipping. The second layer is crisis management protocols. These are predefined responses for when stress overwhelms normal coping mechanisms. They protect your recovery when life compromises your ability to make rational choices. For me, this looked like a simplified daily routine to maintain essentials, a pre-identified support network ready to lean on, and a list of minimum viable self-care practices that could keep me afloat without demanding heroic effort. The magic of crisis protocols is designing them in calm periods, so they operate automatically when you're stressed. The third layer is recovery and reconstruction systems. These aren't just about surviving a storm. They're about coming out stronger. These systems help you learn from crises and rebuild better than before, rather than simply returning to your prior baseline. I used structured post-crisis reviews to see what worked and what didn't. I mapped gradual steps back to full capacity without overwhelming myself, and I updated my resilience systems based on lessons learned. So next time, I'd be even better prepared. One principle I leaned on heavily is stress inoculation. Intentionally exposing yourself to manageable challenges to build capacity for bigger ones. Like vaccines, which expose the immune system to a weakened threat, stress inoculation prepares your mind and habits to handle full-strength stress when it arrives. Cold showers, difficult conversations, projects slightly beyond my comfort zone. Each small voluntary challenge made involuntary challenges easier to handle. Resilience is also about environmental design. Your surroundings either support your recovery or sabotage it. I learned to structure my environment for success, keeping healthy foods visible, junk food out of reach, screens less dominant, books and journals prominent. My environment reminded me of values, not distractions. It also meant curating relationships, surrounding myself with people who encouraged growth rather than enabling destructive habits. Not cutting people out entirely, but being intentional about who I leaned on when vulnerable. The power of resilience comes from the feedback loop it creates. Each successful navigation of stress without reverting to destructive patterns builds mastery. These mastery experiences are the strongest predictors of future resilience. The more evidence you accumulate that you can handle stress constructively, the more capable you become. This confidence encourages proactive engagement with challenges rather than reactive avoidance, creating an upward spiral of growth and resilience. The pinnacle of resilience is anti-fragility, a concept Nassim Taleb describes as the ability not just to survive stress, but to improve because of it. Anti-fragile systems don't return to baseline, they emerge stronger. To develop anti-fragility, I started reframing challenges as opportunities to grow. During difficult times, I asked myself, what is this teaching me about myself? How might this prepare me for something better? What strengths am I developing just by navigating this difficulty? Like any system, resilience requires maintenance. My resilience maintenance protocol involved regular reviews, adjustments for life changes, and testing systems in low-stakes situations to ensure they function under pressure. I even performed resilience audits across physical health, emotional regulation, social support, financial stability, and personal grounding. Finally, individual resilience is powerful, but community resilience multiplies that power. Connecting with others committed to constructive change creates mutual support that reinforces everyone's growth. My community became accountability partners, sources of encouragement, and witnesses to progress that might seem small to outsiders, but was monumental for those who understood the journey. The architecture of resilience revealed something profound. Lasting change isn't forged through dramatic transformations or perfect execution. It's engineered through systems that protect your best choices and shield against your worst impulses. You can't control when life tests you, but you can control how ready you are when it does. You can't prevent all stress, but you can design systems that allow you to navigate it without destroying your progress. Resilience isn't about becoming invulnerable. It's about becoming someone who can face uncertainty without abandoning values, who can endure failure without losing faith in their capacity to succeed. And building that architecture doesn't require perfection. It demands intention, consistency, and recognition that resilience is a practice, not a destination. A practice that starts with your next choice, the next system you build, the next step you take toward becoming someone who can handle whatever life throws at you without destroying what matters most. Chapter 6, The Guardian Mindset. The moment of truth arrived, disguised as an ordinary Sunday afternoon. I was sitting in my living room, reading a book, when I realized something extraordinary had happened without my noticing. I had stopped thinking about my recovery from destructive patterns. Not because I'd forgotten about it, not because I'd become complacent, but because the systems I had built to protect myself had become so integrated into my life that maintaining them required no conscious effort. The destructive habits that once dominated my decisions felt alien now. So foreign that choosing them would have been like deliberately harming a stranger. The resilient systems I'd painstakingly constructed had evolved from external disciplines into internal instincts. I had become what I call a guardian of my own life. Someone who protects and nurtures their well-being, not through constant vigilance, but through deeply embedded wisdom about what truly serves growth and what only serves destruction. This transition, from active recovery to guardian mindset, marks the final stage of transformation, from someone who struggles with destructive patterns to someone who naturally chooses constructive ones. The guardian mindset is a fundamental shift in how you relate to your own choices. In early recovery, you fight destructive impulses. In resilience, you prepare for challenges. In guardianship, destructive choices feel inherently inconsistent with who you are. It's not about perfection. It's not about never slipping. It's about reaching a level of integration where your values, choices, and identity align so deeply that destructive patterns feel like violations of your core self, rather than tempting alternatives. This evolution happens gradually, through accumulated evidence. Each time you interrupt a destructive pattern, each time you choose construction over destruction, you build proof that you are someone who can be trusted with your own well-being. One of the most remarkable things about guardianship is how protective instincts emerge naturally. You no longer rely on sheer willpower. Like a parent shielding a child, you instinctively protect yourself from choices, situations, and relationships that threaten your well-being. This instinct shows up in subtle but powerful ways. You automatically avoid situations that trigger old patterns, gravitate toward people and activities that support your growth, and sense when something doesn't align with your values, even before your rational mind catches up. The protective instinct isn't paranoid or restrictive. It's discerning and nurturing, like a wise parent who knows the difference between necessary challenges that promote growth and unnecessary risks that threaten it. The guardian mindset operates from wisdom, the kind of understanding that comes not from books, but from lived experience. You know the difference between choices that provide temporary pleasure versus lasting satisfaction, quick fixes versus sustainable energy, superficial interactions versus genuine connection. You can sense which decisions will serve your long-term well-being and which only serve immediate gratification. This doesn't mean you never indulge in immediate pleasure, but when you do, it's a conscious choice made from abundance, not a reflex born from depletion. One of the most surprising aspects of guardianship is what I call the maintenance without effort phenomenon. Habits that once required discipline now flow naturally. Boundaries you once had to enforce consciously are now instinctive. Not because you have superhuman willpower, but because you've rewired your brain and rebuilt your identity around choices that serve your well-being. As you become a more effective guardian, something remarkable happens. Your capacity to support others expands naturally. You don't have to teach or preach. Your presence, your consistency, your quiet satisfaction with life becomes permission for others to believe such fulfillment is possible. This expansion of care creates ripple effects that extend far beyond your individual transformation, contributing to communities where constructive choices become normal and destructive patterns become less acceptable. Even in guardianship, life continues to present seasons: growth, abundance, reflection, and challenge. The difference is that guardians navigate these seasons from strength and wisdom rather than reactivity and fear. Guardian spring, opportunities, new growth. Guardians approach these seasons with excitement tempered by wisdom. Guardian summer, abundance, success, flourishing. Guardians enjoy these fully while staying grounded. Guardian fall, harvest, reflection, preparation. Guardians strengthen systems and deepen wisdom. Guardian winter, challenge, loss, struggle. Guardians navigate with grace, using established systems to maintain well-being while processing difficulty. Guardians operate from what I call a legacy perspective, making choices with long-term impact in mind. What kind of person am I becoming through this choice? What example am I setting for those who look to me? How does this decision shape my capacity to serve others? This perspective isn't about pressure or perfectionism. It's rooted in love, not fear. It honors the gift of your life and the responsibility that comes with the wisdom you've earned. The guardian mindset holds a paradox. The more effectively you protect yourself, the more capacity you have to contribute to others. It challenges the cultural narrative that self-care is selfish, or that focusing on growth neglects others. Guardians know you can only give what you have, and protecting yourself is the first step to contributing to anything meaningful. Guardianship isn't a final destination. It's a way of traveling. Guardians grow, learn, and evolve, but from a foundation of stability, not chaos. They remain curious, open to new experiences, willing to adapt, yet guided by accumulated wisdom rather than desperation. The ultimate gift of guardianship isn't just your transformation. It's the proof it provides to everyone around you. In a world where destructive patterns feel inevitable, guardians show that change is possible. Recovery is achievable. Humans can learn to consistently choose construction over destruction. And this proof isn't taught. It's lived. Quiet. Consistent. Visible. It's the demonstration that transformation is possible, that recovery is real, that becoming a guardian of what matters most is not a dream, but a practice. You can't fix your life in a single day, but you can begin this journey now. You can start making choices that protect what matters most, that serve long-term flourishing rather than immediate impulses. And that choice, the decision to begin guarding your life, can happen right now, in this moment, with the very next decision you make. The journey from destruction to guardianship is long but simple. Start by recognizing that you are worth protecting, worth nurturing, worth the effort it takes to become someone who naturally chooses well. And once you begin, you realize it's not just your life that transforms. You start contributing to a world where guardianship is normal, where protection is instinctive, and choosing construction over destruction becomes the obvious path. The guardian mindset doesn't just save your life. It shows others that lives can be saved, patterns can be changed, and humans can learn to choose better. And that demonstration, lived quietly and consistently, becomes a gift to everyone who witnesses it. A reminder that transformation is possible, that recovery is achievable, that becoming a guardian of what matters most is not a dream, but a practice that begins now.